Alison Ver Halen is a content marketer, SEO strategist, and author of Content Marketing Made Easy. She combines human insight and writing talent to make impactful campaigns to build strong brands and brand authority. In this episode, you will learn the importance of understanding your target audience and creating a content strategy that meets their needs. You will also hear about blogging and how it will benefit your business by improving SEO, building brand awareness, and establishing thought leadership. Alison also shares her effective SEO strategies, how to effectively use subheadings, header tags, and incorporate relevant keywords. We also discuss many different aspects of content marketing, such as, is AI good or bad for marketers? What makes a good sales page? And insights on repurposing content, the value of owned audiences, and the future of the marketing industry.
So I completely stumbled into this career. In college, majored in English and psychology, so got the perfect degree for what I'm doing now. Had no clue this was an option. I thought I wanted to work in publishing, but I graduated in 2009 right after the job market crashed. So that wasn't going to happen. So I ended up answering phones for a few years just as a way to almost pay the bills. Found myself between jobs at one point, and my roommate at the time, her dad, who was an attorney, was awesome and offered to give me stuff to do around his office until I got back on my feet. And one of the things he needed was someone to write blog posts for his law firm. And he knew I had a strong writing background, so he offered me the gig. And I was like, what? I can get paid to write? Seriously? Yeah, sign me up. So I jumped at that chance and started writing for him, and then for an associate of his, and then for some friends of mine. Did eventually get another day job, but I kept writing on the side. And it was one of those things where anytime anyone asked what I was doing, I'd be like, well, by day I answer phones, but I'm really a writer. And I would put much more emphasis on that than the day job that I did not like and ditched as soon as it got to the point where I couldn't really, my business was growing to the point that it was competing with my day job. And it was like, I can't continue juggling both of these anymore. So yeah, I ditched the day job, about 9.5 years ago now. And I've been doing this full time ever since.
Nice. And this would be, early 2010s that you're kind of writing these blogs and that kind of thing. So talk to me about the blogging landscape back then, because obviously in the beginning, the internet was mostly text-based, blogs and all that kind of stuff. In 2010 times is where we start seeing social media become more prevalent. We're seeing YouTube come into the kind of, the zeitgeist as well. But in most people's minds, they're not really reading blogs. They're not really looking at blogs. So what was your kind of blog experience as, as a person who's writing blogs full time? What did that look like?
Yeah, well, it was a lot easier to get rankings through blogging and to get conversions through blogging. Still totally doable. It just requires a lot more strategy now than it did back then. When I was doing that for my clients, I absolutely got great results for them just by publishing good content 2 to 4 times per month on their blog. We didn't really have a set schedule, which is something I always recommend now. I had no idea what keywords were. I was not doing keyword research or optimizing anything to make Google like us. It was just a matter of putting content out there that was relevant to what we were doing, publishing it, and it was really successful. So that was 2012-ish. So yeah, fast forward to 2024 and it's very different. And now there are all these other things that I'm doing before I ever start writing to make sure that the content is as effective as it can be, because it's just gotten so much more competitive.
And, you said there that you were kind of just writing to write about the topic that was at hand, but now you need more of a content strategy. So I wonder if you can give me kind of like a general idea about what content strategy is, how we can go about building our own content strategies if we are planning to do any writing and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It all starts with your target audience. Who is your target audience? What is their awareness of your industry and what you're doing? A big mistake I see a lot of people using, not just lawyers, but especially lawyers, is talking over the heads of their clients. They're using all these terms and Latin phrases and things that their target audience has no concept of. So first and foremost, meet them where they are, use the language they're using, answer the questions that they are asking, create content that will position you as a thought leader and an expert in your industry so that you become that go-to person for answers when they have questions. And then that then leads to becoming the go-to person when they're ready to hire. So yeah, it all starts with knowing everything you can about your target audience so you can create content that resonates with them, that they find really relatable. I use the word you in my content all the time because that makes it sound really conversational. It's really easy to read. People feel like you're really talking to them. They know you're not. They know on an intellectual level that you're talking to however many people are reading your blog. They feel like you're talking directly to them, and that's a great way to start building that relationship with them. Next up is come up with a schedule, no less than once a month, preferably twice a month. Like I said, that first blog I was writing was 2 to 4 times per month, and we got really good results. So whatever you can do that's more than once a month, that you know you can stick to consistently, is the next step. Is have a schedule, stick to it as hard as you would stick to any other deadline for your business. And then I would do keyword research. A lot of people get really intimidated by that. I do have a tool that I pay for to use to do my keyword research. There are free tools available that are not as reliable with the data they provide. So I would start with really talking to your ideal clients, because again, it all goes back to them. So what are the questions that you hear over and over again when you're on podcasts, when you're at networking events, when you're talking to clients and prospects? What are the same things that keep coming up? Because if they're asking you those questions on Zoom, on podcasts, in person, chances are them, or at least people like them, are looking for answers to those questions online as well. So start by answering those questions. And then there's a whole bunch of other topics I can get into as far as how to find topics. We don't have time for all of that, but that's a good start. That, and the other free tool that I love is answerthepublic.com. Put in a search keyword or a search term. Again, you can just put in like a service you provide or the name of your company and find all of the things, all of the questions people are asking across the internet using that term or phrase. Great way to come up with blog post topic ideas. So, and then always have a call to action. Make sure it's relevant. So depending on your industry, it's not necessarily going to be like, hey, hire us. Hey, let's have a consultation. It could be sign up for my newsletter, follow us on social media, sign up for our upcoming webinar. Know where they are in the buyer journey. And mapping out the buyer journey is a whole other process we could go through. But once you have that nailed, know where people are in the buyer journey when they're consuming each piece of content, so you can lead them to the next stage of the buyer journey.
And you mentioned a tool there, Answer the Public, and you said that there's another tool, another keyword tool that you use, and the only ones I'm really aware of is Google Trends and Spark Toro. So I'm wondering what keyword search tools you use so that we can, try to get as good as research going as you do.
So the tool that I use is SERPstat, SERPstat.com. I don't think there's a free version of that one. There is like a free 7-day trial. But after that, if you want to keep using it, you got to pay for it. It's actually pretty affordable, especially compared to a lot of the other SEO tools out there. SEMrush, Moz are the big ones. Some of the big ones. Ahrefs is another big one. We mentioned Answer the Public, which is now owned by Neil Patel. He has his own keyword research tool, which again is like a limited number of searches. Similar to Answer the Public, you can have, I think 1 or 2 searches before you have to start paying. So those are all options. I really did my research before landing on SERPstat, which I found has the most accurate data on the keywords you're searching for, which is the whole reason that we do keyword research. So I was like, okay, if this is the one that's giving me the most accurate information, this is the one I'm going to be using.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I do like, I think it's Neil Patel and Eric Sue. They have a kind of partnership together where they have like a marketing thing going on. I used to listen to their stuff quite a lot because they did like a daily podcast and all that kind of stuff. But recently they've fallen out of my abilities of listing when I realized that I'm only going to focus on what I'm good at, and I'm not good at marketing. I have an understanding, but I don't have an expertise, and I don't wish to make it an expertise. Whereas people like you're an expert. That's why I sit here and talk to you, to get all these little nuggets and stuff like that. But I'm glad that you mentioned someone that I actually know about, rather than me having to go do more research about who that person is. So one of the things that you mentioned as well is about developing content strategy, and that is something that's really, really crucial. So what I want to know is, how do we determine that target audience and use that in a way that is beneficial to us. And I'll give you a context so we can kind of build this picture in a direction that's useful. This person is an entrepreneur, they're a founder of a business, the business has just started out, they're generating some revenue, they've been through some, some things like fundraising, or they've got some clients. That's the kind of person here who's trying to get their content marketing going. So I want to know how we determine our target audience and what are the crucial steps in building that target audience.
Yeah, so if they have been in business for a little bit, it doesn't have to be years. If they are starting to generate some revenue and they've got some good clients, I always start with, who are your favorite clients? Who are the people that you really look forward to working with? And who are the people that you're like, oh, this person again? So start with who are your favorite clients and really find as much information on those people as you can. Stalk them on social media. Social media is a great tool for digging up all kinds of information on everyone. So find out where they're hanging out online as well as in person. But from the perspective of gathering information, find out where they're hanging out online and really dig into that. See what other companies they're following, what other influencers they're following, what are they posting about? And then those other people that they're following, what are they posting about and who are they connected to? So you can really, get into the weeds with that. You don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because it is endless. But start with at least their profile, their activity on social media, because that will give you the best indication of what they're interested in, because that's what we all do as soon as we find something interesting. We talk about it on social media. We look it up on social media. We look for more information. If you're completely starting out and you have no clients, or you don't have any clients that you like yet, you're just doing all the jobs that come because you got to get some money in the door, look at your competitors. Who are like your top 3 competitors? Who are the people who are following them on social media? And then that's kind of your marketing persona right there, is that person who's following your competitor. So then you want to do that information, that research into them as far as what other influencers, companies are they following online? What are they posting about? So on and so forth. So yeah, I love social media as a way to dig up all that information.
Cool. Okay, so we've got an idea for how we find our target audience, what kind of things we're going to say to them through our kind of keyword researching tools. But one thing that I kind of forgot to ask before this was, the benefits of blogging, right? As in, hopefully when we're doing marketing, it's to either build brand image or to get leads. Where does blogging sit in that kind of 2 buckets? And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, if there's more buckets that blogging could fit into. But yeah, sorry, talk to me about where blogging sits and what it can do for a business or a founder or just a person in general.
Yeah, no, I think those are 2 good buckets, because I think everything else I would think of would fit into one of those 2 buckets. I think blogging has a place in both buckets. Certainly from an SEO perspective, for those who don't know, SEO stands for search engine optimization, otherwise known as making Google your friend, so that when people are on Google looking for a company like you or services like you or asking questions related to your industry, hopefully you will show up. The more content that is on your website, the better Google is able to get an idea of what your website is all about, what kinds of topics you cover, what your content is all about, what questions you're answering, and then it knows which searches to match you with. So by having a blog, you're giving Google a ton of information so that it can do its job really well. Google also prioritizes newer content over older content. So if you put up a bunch of static landing pages on your website and you go, ta-da, I built my website, I'm done, I never have to do anything ever again, you're wrong, because Google is going to look at that and be like, well, this is from like 5 years ago. Like, is this even still relevant? So and again, that's where the consistency comes in with publishing new content, so that Google goes, oh, this was just published last month or 2 or 3 months ago, so it's got to be relevant, so we're going to boost it in the rankings. So that's first and foremost, I think, in terms of blogging, is getting Google's attention. So you're building brand awareness, you're driving more people to your website. It is also something you can then post on social media that's providing value, put out in your newsletter that's providing value. So you have something, instead of going, what am I going to talk about on social media this week? You have a new blog post, talk about that. Easy, and then you're leading people back to your website. So that's awesome. And then setting yourself up as a thought leader in your industry, as the go-to person, is the other big benefit of blogging. And it can go a long way towards building that brand. There's the brand awareness, and then there's, getting people to know you is brand awareness. And then there's getting people to like and trust you. And that's where blogging can come in, because if they're consistently seeing that valuable content that you're publishing over and over again, they're going to be more likely to trust you. So yeah, publish on a schedule, publish valuable content that answers people's questions. And again, when people find you, however they find your website, maybe they were referred to you, maybe they found you on social media, they click through to your website, they're like, okay, who is this person? What is this company all about? Are they really an expert in their industry? Do they really know what they're talking about? Especially when you're talking about those professional service industries, super important that you let people know, yeah, we really do know what we're talking about. People are going to go straight to the blog to find that information. So having a whole bunch of topics of those articles that are covering topics that answer their question makes them go, oh, they can dig through that content, but even just seeing that you have all those articles gives you so much more credibility in the eyes of your consumer. So I think there's probably even more benefits to blogging, but those are the ones that always come top of mind for me.
Cool. And you mentioned there the dark art of SEO. That is something that is always, we've got to search engine optimize things. And, it's a bit of one of those things where everyone knows the word, everyone knows the term, but no one really knows how to do it. So I want to know what your effective strategies are for using SEO in our website and, having it as a way to improve our search engine rankings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Google is notoriously tight-lipped about their algorithm. And actually, Google admitted not too long ago, they're not even sure what their algorithm is doing anymore, because they use so much AI that then took in information and then changed, and took in more information and then changed, to the point where it is so far removed from what Google initially created that Google's like, yeah, we don't really know what it's doing anymore. So how's that for reassuring? My basis for an SEO strategy, because people talk a lot about the fact that Google is constantly changing its algorithm. Every 3 or 4 months, Google goes, hey, we're launching a big update. It's going to rock the boat a little bit, so just hang tight. And we all kind of watch our traffic go up and down until things chill out after a couple weeks. So those, I think, get people really nervous because they never know what's coming. They never know what Google's going to do next. Google goes, yeah, this is our core update for this month and this year. And they give it weird names like Panda or whatever. And it's like, okay, we don't actually know what this is doing. So yeah, Google wants us to feel like we're in the dark. My perspective on SEO is that Google's goal is to help people find the content that answers their questions. So again, if you identify your target audience, if you identify the questions they're asking as it relates to your industry, and create high quality content that answers those questions, you're going to be golden. So stick to that. That should be your strategy first and foremost. Is there more to SEO than that? Yes, absolutely. Google has all kinds of tricks that it uses to identify high quality content versus thin or low quality content, which we can argue about, but it doesn't do any good to argue with Google because they hold all the strings. So first and foremost is length. Google prefers content that is 500 words or longer, which is stupid, but what can you do? So I do recommend that every blog post is at least 500 words. There are people who are going to say every blog post should be 2,000 or 3,000 words long. I'm not going to do that. I am going to say that every topic you cover on your blog, cover everything there is to cover on that topic in that one blog post. That's how you get those rich ultimate guide style posts. As much as you can, include your own perspective as far as okay, what does this mean kind of thing with whatever it is you're talking about, because that is how you set yourself apart as a thought leader in your industry. And that is also how you end up, again, Google's going to figure that out, that you've got that really good, rich content that no one else is saying. And your audience is going to figure that out too. So as much as you can make it unique, and include a story element, that's not an SEO strategy. That's just a good marketing strategy. You're so much more A, engaging, and B, memorable if you have a story, because we are primed to remember stories. You can give people all the stats and numbers and figures and the particularly math brain people might be able to remember some of those things, but for the vast majority of us, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. But tell us a story, and we are going to remember that. We are going to latch on to that. So yeah, and then break it up, especially if you have that really long content. Break it up into subheadings. Use the header tag. Don't just bold it. Actually have a little bit of HTML in there that says this is a headline, this is a subheading, this is a subheading, and then keywords. Make sure you use a good target keyword, and then you have a bunch of related keywords you also want in there. Don't keyword stuff. Keyword stuffing is when you use one keyword as many keyword times as you can keyword into a particular keyword.
I love that sentence.
No one likes that.
Sorry, carry on.
That's the kind of thing. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that used to work in the early days of SEO, when it was just like, what are people searching for? Who's are using these words? Okay, we're gonna match them up. That was a long time ago. Google has long since gotten wise. Does not like that practice anymore. And if you do try to include a particular keyword or search phrase too many times into a piece of content, that could actually hurt your SEO. So yes, use your target keyword throughout your content, especially in things like your heading, your title, your URL, because Google scans those before it reads the rest of your content. But also have synonyms and related keywords that you can use interchangeably throughout your content. It's going to make it better reading for the real life people looking at your website, but it's also going to improve your SEO, because Google is getting better and better at identifying synonyms and going, okay, if they're using this word and this word, we can guess this is what they're talking about.
Lovely stuff. And you seem to be quite on top of these things. You just mentioned there that using a keyword for a keyword in a keyword sentence, that sentence was lovely. But you seem to be constantly learning and improving your knowledge on content marketing and SEO. So where do you do your learnings? How do you do your learnings? Because there's someone out there who probably is just getting started in content marketing, and so they know the core philosophies. They have to write well, and they have to be able to use psychology to get into people's minds. But how do they stay on top of the trends or be aware of the trends? So I'm asking, where do you do your learning? What do you learn from, that kind of thing?
Yeah, Content Marketing Institute is one of my favorite blogs. What else? SEMrush, Moz, HubSpot are all really good sources of information. So I do tend to stay on top of those blogs as well. And then reading books as much as I can, the SEO books, which is a little bit harder because you can't really keep those evergreen. You have to make sure, if a book is about SEO, when did it last come out? So I do also read books that are just about writing in general. But I also read, what did I read? Some giant tome on SEO that I read at the end of last year. Now I can't even remember what it was called. I would not recommend it for beginners. It is definitely, when you want to dive deep into the weeds of SEO, pull out this book. And there was a book on backlinks I read a year or two ago that was actually, dry, boring business stuff, but really valuable information, because that's something that's a really important aspect of SEO. So yeah, it's just being online and knowing who those trusted sources are. So I would always start with Content Marketing Institute, SEMrush, Moz, M-O-Z. Yeah.
Cool. Lovely stuff. And, speaking of trends and staying on top of them, you can't speak to anyone in marketing without mentioning the two dreaded letters at the moment, AI. Everybody's all over AI. Everybody loves ChatGPT. Those of us that are a bit more enlightened have found specialized tools for specialized purposes. But talk to me about AI and its current, I guess, not even destruction, but current interference with the world of content marketing. What's going on with you? Do you use AI? Do you not use AI? Yeah, talk to me about that.
Yeah, I don't really use it. I write really fast, so I actually timed myself at one point writing 2 blog posts for one client, so they were on similar topics, and one I used ChatGPT and the other I did completely from scratch. It actually took me longer to do the prompt for ChatGPT and then edit it to get it to a point where I felt comfortable turning it in, like significantly longer than it took me to just write the blog post on my own from scratch. So no, I don't really use ChatGPT. When I do use it, it's usually because I'm stuck. Maybe I need ideas for content. Maybe I kind of know what I want to write about, but I'm having trouble getting started. It can be a great way to just get over that hump and get something on the screen. So you can grab that and use it and work with it and go, oh, right, I can talk about this. I can say such and such. And then you're off and running. So yeah, I think ChatGPT is a great first draft. It is generic. It does also produce wrong content literally half of the time. So definitely proceed with caution when using ChatGPT. We've all heard those horror stories of people turning in something or publishing an ad using, ChatGPT or Bard that had just flat out wrong information and they didn't bother to check and they look like idiots. So at the very least, check it for accuracy. Make sure it's in line with your brand. It has your brand voice before you publish it. And again, include stories. AI is really bad at stories and it's really, really bad at calls to action right now. I'm sure it will get better at those things, but right now it's not it's not very good. So include those personal touches before you publish it. But it can be a good way to kind of get that boring, dry stuff out of the way, so that then you can write the fun part of the content.
I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people are saying, oh, AI is here to take content writers' lunch. It's going to be this, it's going to be that. But you can always kind of spot an AI post, an AI this and AI that, because it's using old data to make new kind of conclusions. So it's throwing emojis everywhere. It's using unlock, unleash, words that we don't really use in our day-to-day life, delve and all that kind of stuff. And it goes back to what you said in the beginning where a lot of people, when they're using or starting out their marketing journey, they are using language that goes over people's heads. And in this case, I think AI, when it tries to be, marketing brain led, it uses words that people really don't use day to day, but it thinks people use them day to day because they're in a lot of academic textbooks, which is something that it would be trained on. And, all that kind of stuff is just a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then again, like you said, if it doesn't know something, it does just make it up. And it'll even give you a fake source. It'll be like, oh, it was on this website. It's like, show me the link. It's like, you know what? Can't find that link actually. But next time I promise I'll have it. So I'm glad that we've kind of covered a very kind of brief overview of what content marketing is, how to find your target audience, what keywords to look for, what good copy looks like. A deep dive into SEO is not possible, but we've dove a little bit in and we've got our feet wet with SEO and we kind of got a rough idea of what's working now versus what's not working now. But what I'd like to hear, and like you said, people connect with stories. I'd like to hear a client success story if possible. So someone who came to you with a problem, or maybe they didn't even know they had a problem. You started banging out all that writing for them, and now they're happy as Larry with their leads or, more website visitors. Yeah, talk me through a success story of yours. I'm sure you've got loads.
Yeah, well, my favorite is still that first client I started writing for, that lawyer who was writing his own blog posts up until he hired me to do that for him. And lawyers should not be allowed to write their own marketing content. They're great writers, but there's a big difference between writing, legal motions and legal theory versus marketing content. So I had never written a blog post before. So I was looking through his existing blog posts to get an idea of what I was supposed to write about. And the first blog post I found was terrible. Like, it started off pretty well. The first paragraph or two was fine, but then it jumped to something completely different in the next paragraph. And I was like, wait, how did I get from there to here? What? Sat there and figured it out, did eventually figure out, okay, this is what he's trying to do here. Got it. But the only reason I sat there and figured it out was because I was getting paid to. If I had been a prospect, I would have been like, oh, okay, thanks. I'm going to find what I need somewhere else because this is not helping me. So yeah, I went back to him and was like, yes, I can do this for you because I know I can do better than this. So the way it worked, I now have a service where I, come up with blog post topics for my clients. But at the time it was, okay, what do you want me to blog about? So he would send me the topics, and I would turn it into a blog post that, had a story element to it, took people through the journey of like, this is what this case is. This is where these people screwed up. This is what the result may or may not be, because we were usually talking about stuff that was still in trial. sometimes we would talk about decisions that had come out. So yeah, and then we had a call to action at the end. So it was just the process of putting it into that story and making it so that it was really relatable and readable, and people actually wanted to keep reading it. So after about 6 months, he came back and told me that I had brought in $75,000 worth of business to the law firm just through the blog post I was writing for him. So that was my first key indicator that this is not just busy work. This is actually having a real impact on his business. So I think that was when I first started thinking about doing it for, more than just that one person. Also the fact that every time I told people what I did, they were like, oh, we need content. Oh, we need a writer. Let's talk.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people think that they're good writers and they're not. And I'll self-admittedly say that I'm probably a good fiction writer. Like, I've written great fiction, or a good fiction that people have enjoyed, should I say. But like actual, non-fiction stuff that sells stuff that, that is great for a sales page or a landing page is something that is not my expertise, or that convinces people to buy. Convincing language. I wonder if you can talk me through what makes a good sales page, or what makes a good landing page. What kind of language are we using? What kind of voice are we using? Because I'm aware of there's this thing called the passive voice and the active voice, that type of thing. So yeah, talk to me about that. Get as nerdy as you like, because I am interested in this and I am learning live on air here right here.
Yeah, well, and I could go on a whole rant about active versus passive voice when it comes to fiction, because as I'm sure you know, there's a big movement right now towards only active voice, never passive voice. And it's like, okay, that's just as boring to only use one and never use the other. But that we can have that conversation some other time. From a marketing perspective, as far as what language to use, you again understand your target audience and know the language that they are using. Ask your clients and prospects how they would describe your products and services, and then use the language that they give you in the content you're creating, because that's how you know that your content is really going to resonate with people. That is the biggest way to use content to make a connection with people, is just to use the same language they're using. Super powerful, and it all happens on a subconscious level. So they don't even know why they feel so attracted to you right now, but it's because you have signaled that you are a member of their tribe, and that is really powerful. So yeah, use the same language that they are using to describe your products and services. The biggest problem people use is they get all caught up in features, and they want to talk about all the cool stuff that their product does, or their software does, or what you can do with this, that, and the other. And people don't actually care about that. Mm-hmm. People care about benefits. How is this going to make my life better? That is the question you need to ask or answer in all of your sales content. How is this going to make my life better? What problem is it solving? How is it going to solve the problem? What is my life going to look like once we have this problem solved? So that should always be the focus first and foremost. A lot of people also talk about pain points, talk about the problem. What does it look like to be in the problem before you get to the solution? That's a great way of reminding them of how aggravating this is, or terrifying this is, depending on the problem you're solving. Really remind them of that, so that when you get to here's what the solution looks like, it looks so much better than just introducing the solution by itself, because then that becomes your baseline. If your baseline is down here, then the solution is suddenly up here. So pain point, solution, use really simple language. Even with highly educated audiences, it makes sense to use shorter words, like 3 syllables or less. It makes sense to use shorter sentences and then shorter paragraphs, so there's lots of white space, so people can just keep scrolling and keep reading without even realizing that they're reading hundreds of words, because they're just reading one line at a time. But before they know it, they've read the whole page, assuming you've done all the other things you need to do to make the content really accessible, and make them want to read it. So those are the big ones. And then obviously have a call to action. Again, know where they are in the buyer journey. With the sales page, they're probably at the end of the buyer journey. So that's where it makes sense to do the whole, okay, let's have a conversation, sign up here, here's the pay button, whatever it is that they need to do to take that final step. have that as your call to action. Have one call to action. Don't try to be like, well, you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this, because we get overloaded very easily, overwhelmed very easily with options. So just tell them what you want them to do, make it really easy for them to do it. Because yeah, we get overwhelmed really easily. And if it's not a problem that we need to solve right now, we're just going to click away and be like, I'm going to deal with this later.
Cool. Yeah, that's some solid advice right there. So hopefully the listener had their pen out or had their notes app ready and was taking down notes on that, because that kind of stuff there is, golden, and a lot of people won't give that away. They'll make you buy their ebook or buy their free webinar thing. Oh, you can't buy a free webinar, but you know what I mean? Join their free webinar to get onto this, to get onto that. A lot of people aren't giving away that information, for free on a podcast. So thank you so much for that. And you've been in this industry now for, like you said, about 12 years, 9 years full time, that type of thing. So it's safe to say that you're in this industry to stay. And at the moment, the stage you're at, you would say we're in a good place with blogging. Things are okay. It's not the most popular thing, and it should be a lot more popular. But I'm wondering what do you see for the future of content marketing, blogging, and SEO, and all the kind of things that you focus on in the marketing world? What does it look like?
Yeah, that is interesting. I do think AI is going to have an impact, but not the impact that a lot of people think. Because as we talked about, the way it works is I always use generative in quotes when I talk about generative AI, because it's not really generating anything. It's just scraping existing content from other sources and repurposing it for us. And like we said, that's nothing new. That's just giving us old information in a new format. But there are a lot of people who are lazy and or don't realize the dangers of that, and they will just copy and paste from ChatGPT onto their website, which is not great content. It's very thin. It's very generic, and it's gonna lead to a lot of the same and then ChatGPT is going to scrape that content and use that in other content it creates, and it's going to be just this cycle of crappy content. So I actually think this really is going to produce a great opportunity to stand out, to position yourself as a thought leader by creating content that is branded, that does have your unique voice, that incorporates a story element into the content, and positions you as a thought leader so that you're not sounding like everyone out there who's just pumping out content for the sake of pumping out content.
Nice. And you mentioned in the beginning as well, or earlier in the conversation, that there's a few books that you've read recently. Obviously not the super nerdy ones that you said that are big and thick and chunky and too nerdy. Maybe some of the kind of lighter touch, New York Times bestseller type books that a lot of people have access to. What are the ones that you've got the most from?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me not break stuff. I do have to plug my own book.
Of course.
Content Marketing Made Easy, which you can find on Amazon. Because, the whole idea of that book was making, like you talked about SEO when we first started, like SEO is this dark art, and I really wanted to write a book that made it not such a dark art, make people see that, yes, they can do it themselves. It does take work, but it outlines my whole process from beginning to end of identifying my target audience, coming up with the content strategy, creating and promoting and distributing that content. So that is Content Marketing Made Easy on Amazon. Another one, Julia McCoy is another one. And I'm trying to remember what the title of her, she has a bunch of books out now, but she had a content marketing book that I read years ago that it was kind of like my Bible. And that was also really readable and really easy for people to read. It was something about content. It was like content strategy. Also self-published on Amazon. Yeah. Oh, They Ask You Answer is one that I just read. That was so good. Highly recommend that, by Marcus Sheridan. Practical Content Strategy and Marketing. That's the one by Julia McCoy. That's a really good one.
Lovely stuff.
Yeah, those are the ones I would start with.
And I actually skipped over that because I didn't really remember that you've written a book. But talk to me about the book. Talk to me about the sections in the book, the things you're trying to do. Obviously, you're trying to make content marketing easier for the average person. So, yes, talk to me how do you do that? What does that look like?
Yeah, it dives deeper into everything, if not most of the things we talked about here, including AI.
Hmm.
As well as, like I said, how to identify your ideal clients, who's your target audience, all the information you need to gather on them, how to gather that information, and then assemble it into a comprehensive marketing persona or personas, and then how to use that when coming up with your content strategy, how to do keyword research, how to use the keywords in your content, how to use things like Google Analytics. I think there's a chapter on Google My Business, and how to optimize that, so that, because that's also really important for SEO. And then distributing your content. I do talk a little bit about social media in there. Like I said before we started recording, social media is not my strong suit. I know just enough to be dangerous, but it's not my forte. But it is something that you need to know at least a little bit about in order to really distribute and promote your content. And when done right, social media can actually boost your SEO and vice versa. So it's really important from an SEO perspective as well. So I do talk a little bit about that in and email marketing. There's a whole chapter on email marketing in my book. So yeah, it's really everything I could think of about content marketing and SEO and how it all works, and putting it into one book that's readable and easy for the average person to understand. This is not meant for someone who already knows anything about SEO.
Nice. And you mentioned something there about social media. You said, it can influence your SEO, but realistically, what you focus on is blogging and that kind of thing. Talk to me about like owned audiences versus like rented audiences, because that's the kind of battle we're having here. Social media being a rented audience and owned audiences being the type of stuff that you focus on.
Yeah, so I always come back to this story from ages ago, like years and years ago, when Facebook changed their algorithm dramatically, and people literally lost their businesses overnight because they had built their audience on Facebook, they had built their business on Facebook. It was the only way that they interacted with their customers. They sold their products and services online, and then when Facebook was like, "Oh, there's a lot of value here. Now we want you to pay us to boost your posts if you want it to get in front of all of your followers." It literally destroyed people's businesses. And so I always think of that when I think of building your house on rented land, as the saying goes. Your website is the only real estate online that you actually own and fully control. So always, always be leading people back to your website. Get those emails, because if you get those email addresses, even if you use something like MailChimp, you own those email addresses, and you can always export them into another document off of MailChimp. So if something happens to MailChimp, you still have that information. Facebook jail, LinkedIn jail. I've talked to I don't know how many people who had their accounts deleted, and they never even got an explanation as to why that happened. I heard one famous story back when Kate Middleton was marrying Prince William of someone else who was also named Kate Middleton, who had her account deleted because they thought she was a fake account. She's like, "No, I am a real Kate Middleton. I'm not the Kate Middleton, but that is my real name." Could not convince Facebook that she was a real person and not the now Princess of Wales. So there are these frustrations you have to deal with when you are relying on them to get in front of your customers. So your business is too valuable to put all of it in one basket, for one thing, much less in the hands of someone who does not care what's in your best interest. They care about what's in their best interest. And what's in their best interest is keeping people on their site so they can continue selling ads.
Nice. That's a good little summary there. And earlier on in our conversation as well, you mentioned something about using blog posts as a way to inspire other forms of content creation. So I'm wondering if you can talk to me about what that looks like. From a blog post, can we get 4 social media posts, or can we get one good tweet out of a good blog post? How does that kind of repurposing process work?
Yeah, well, that's one for sure, is getting a snippet from your blog post, and putting it up on social media with a link, preferably a snippet that makes people go, "Ooh, I absolutely want to know more about that." So they click through. Email is another way. I always copy and paste the introduction from my blog post into my newsletter with a link back to the website so people can follow that. So I don't put a lot of time or effort into my newsletter. It really is just like, here's what's new in content marketing and in my business these days. And then if there's something I want to promote, I put that in there. So you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. Just create good content and then distribute it as much as you can. We also talked about videos and podcasts. Like, those are huge right now. One of my favorite things to do is to create a video talking about, whatever the topic of the week is. And then you can take the audio from the video and turn that into a podcast. And then you can transcribe the audio, clean that up, and then turn it into a blog post. So people can consume that content however they want to consume it. If they want to listen to the podcast, if they want to watch the video, if they'd rather. I'm one of the few people who actually wants to read the blog post. I know some people would rather listen to it, especially while they're doing other things. But I love reading it because I know that I can read faster than I can listen to it. So especially if I scan it real quick. So that's one of my favorite things to do. Yeah, you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel and have every piece of content be on a totally new topic. You can have one topic for the week, one topic for the month, and then push that out everywhere.
Lovely stuff. I love that. And something that I ask every guest on the podcast, it's a very generic question, but the answer is very kind of specific to you because it's just something, I don't know, it just works, right? The question is, what is it about what you do that brings you the most joy?
Much to my surprise, it's been the strategy part because it's like a puzzle that I get to put together. Like I said, I got into this from the writing side. I've always loved writing. And I do love the fact that I get to write for a living. And I do love it when I get to sit down and write a blog post. But really figuring out, like, okay, who's the target audience here? What problem are we solving? How can we turn this into a story? How can we turn this into a compelling call to action? What's really going to get people to take that next step? What is the next step in the buyer journey? And then how are we going to get them to take that step? Figuring all that out is a lot of fun. SEO is a lot of fun too. I never thought I'd be that person who's like, ooh, let's open another spreadsheet and put all these numbers in here. Never thought that would be me, but I actually find it really fascinating to see, people are searching for this word more than this word, even though they mean basically the same thing. I find it fascinating.
Where can the people find you online?
My website is AV, as in my initials, Alison Ver Halen. So that is avwritingservices.com. You can check out my blog there. You can check out my videos. I think it's Alison Ver Halen on YouTube. I'm on LinkedIn as well as Alison Ver Halen. I am the only Alison Ver Halen I know of, so I'm pretty easy to find.
Thank you for listening to People Explained. New episodes come out every Monday. We would appreciate it if you gave us a review on Apple Podcasts and shared this episode with a friend.